Oh man, I didn't think you would actually join me here. You must be as crazy as I am. Well, this is addictive as hell, so don't say I didn't warn you. You ready? Woo! This one is a doozy. This exercise involves hammer-ons and pull-offs across one string, and we're going to be using a very exotic and cool scale called the Phrygian dominant scale. And since we're using the open B string as our example, this is actually in the key of B. So let me show you the scale that we're working with, and then I'll break down this exercise. So that's the scale that this exercise is based off of, the Phrygian dominant scale in the key of B. Now you don't have to know what Phrygian or dominant or any of that stuff means in order to play this thing. So let's go ahead and break down that exercise. So what we do is we kind of do these fluttering hammer-on pull-off sequences, right? And we start with our first finger on the first fret of the B string. We're going to play that note. Then we're going to hammer with our pinky. We're going to hammer onto the fourth fret of the B string. And then we're going to pull off from the fourth fret of the B string to the first fret. And then we pull off to the open B string, right? So this is actually one sort of chunk of the sequence that we're just going to be repeating this sort of, this pattern, right? Further up the string. So we start off, right, with this one, like I said, kind of fluttering hammer-on pull-off thing, starting with the fretted note, first fret on the B string, pinky hammering onto the fourth fret, right? And then once we're on the fourth fret, we want to pull off back to 1, right? And then we want to pull off from the first fret to the open B string. But when you do this one flutter, you want to just pick it once. One thing I like to do if you want to mute the strings, the other strings, so you can make sure that you're not getting any excess string noise, is I'll kind of rest one of my sort of spare fingers on my picking hand on the high E string here. And when I pick the note, right, when I pick it once, I'll kind of, while I'm sort of waiting, right, for my fretting fingers to do their thing, I'm going to rest the pick on top of the G string. So it's like I'm kind of creating this sort of pincer of muting going on, right? Just so I can keep the B string, you know, since that's the only string that I want to hear, right? I can just keep that isolated. So that's just a little trick if you want to mute the other strings. So we start with that first flutter pattern, right? Then we're going to do the same thing, but we're just going to go up to different frets. So we're going to move from there with our first finger to the fourth fret of the B string, and we're going to pick that note, hammer on to the fifth fret, pull off back to the fourth fret, then back to open. Right, so same pattern, same flutter, right, as what we just did, only in 2 new frets and 2 different fingers, right, or just a different finger configuration. Right, and that's literally that flutter pattern, right, is just kind of in chunks. When you put it all together, it climbs up the whole string. So we got 4th fret to the 5th fret, right, pull off to open, and then we start on the 5th fret with our first finger, and we're going to hammer on to 7, pull off back to 5, and then to open. Right? You can kind of, when you want to sort of separate each of these flutters out, they're like in 4 notes. So think of them in 4 notes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? And then once we've gone from 5 to 7, right, we're going to go between 7 and 8. So from the 7th fret, with our first finger on the B string, we hammer onto the 8th fret with our second finger, pull off back to 7, right, and then pull off to open. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, and that just keeps up. Then we go from 8 to 10 on the B string. So 10th fret, hammer on to 8th fret, hammer on to 10th, pull off back to 8th to open. And then now we move up to between the 10th and the 12th frets here. So we go, so we're doing 10 to 12, pull off back to 10, pull off to open. And then here we start to venture slightly past the octave, right? This being the octave of B, right? So those are the same notes, just at different octaves, right? And then from here, we're going to go 12, hammer on to 13. So it's like kind of like we're starting the scale over. So we've reached the octave of this note, all right? But this is where we end it. We hammer on and pull off from the 12th fret to the 13th fret, back to open, and then we come back to the 12th fret and hold it there. You can give it a little vibrato. So all together we have what makes this exercise so addictive to me is that it always feels like it wants to go faster. Like you kind of always want to keep increasing the speed. So, but of course you want to start slow, get the motion right? Break it up into chunks, those 4-note flutters that we were doing, right? You can kind of get comfortable with the movement of it because you're going to be going back and forth between 2 different fingers. And that's another reason why this exercise is so effective, because you're doing hammer-ons and pull-offs from first finger to pinky, first to second finger, first to third. You know, you're pretty much covering all the ground on your fretting hand, and you're really working those hammer-ons and pull-offs. And when you start slow and you kind of get the motion right, then you can start to think about slowly increasing the speed. But it always feels like it wants to get faster because it kind of has that neoclassical feel, because it's definitely a scale commonly used in neoclassical music, you know. So whenever I play, like I always want to try and play it faster and faster and faster, you know. Woo! You know, it also kind of reminds me a little bit of, I feel like if you play it backwards, it's kind of reminiscent of the solo to YYZ by Rush. Sounds almost exactly like it. I'm sure it's off a couple notes, but sounds pretty close to me. And as a little fun fact, we just learned that it was Phrygian dominant that Alex Lifeson was using when he played that cool little hammer-on pull-off line at the end of that solo. So it doesn't really feel like an exercise, right? It actually has musical value and sound to it. But again, the way it works, your fingers on your fretting hand, you know, works those hammer-ons and pull-offs, it's a great technique booster. But because it's an open string riff and we're playing the entire scale on just one string, you can actually play this on every string of your guitar if you want to. You would just have to change the key of the scale. So when we're playing the B string, right? B being the root note here. So we're playing B Phrygian dominant. But let's say we wanted to do it on the D string, right? It would just be D Phrygian dominant, but we would just play the exact same notes, right? First fret to fourth fret, fourth to fifth, the exact same frets, just on a completely different string. So we're doing the exact same thing, like I said, just on a different string. So now that's D Phrygian dominant. And if you wanted to do G Phrygian dominant, right, go to the G. So that G being the root note now. So we've changed keys, right, but we're still playing the Phrygian dominant scale. Oop. There we go. And then, you know, A string, right? A Phrygian dominant. And then if we wanted to do E, the low E string, E Phrygian dominant. I'm so used to it on the B string, right? But that's another reason why this is a great exercise, because it actually can get you acquainted with doing hammer-ons and pull-offs on like the unwound strings, the wound strings, because they all have a different feel to them, right? So kind of your attack with the hammer-ons isn't exactly perfectly consistent across every size of the string, as I just demonstrated, right? So it looks like I got to practice this exercise on the low E string for sure. Kind of sounds like a metal riff. You can totally take this exercise and do with it what you will if you got a metal band that, you know, is in need of more riffs, right? You can never have too many riffs. All right, I'm having too much fun. And now that I've given you this very addictive, very powerful guitar exercise, once you start playing it, it's going to be testing you in a lot of ways. It's going to be testing the coordination of the fingers of your fretting hand. It's going to be testing the strength of your hammer-ons and pull-offs. And if those techniques have been particularly challenging for you, like you find that no matter how hard you try, you just can't really get more comfortable and more confident with them, chances are there's something that's been killing your progress and you have no idea what it is yet. But you need to identify what it is in order to bust through it, right? So if that sounds like you need to be taking this here survey. This is a free 30-second survey that will identify your #1 guitar progress killer. And this survey has helped thousands of guitar players find out exactly what's been holding them back, right? All these years, and exactly what they got to do in order to bust through them and never have those problems again. So click here to take the survey or check the link in the description box. If you enjoyed this lesson, be sure to hit that like button and consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. And be sure to check out our other relevant lessons right over here. I want to thank you for hanging out with me today. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. I'm Eddie with Guitar Mastery Method, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.